I came back to finish reading and I forgot my drink again. There's not much more to finish, but I might even go into the next chapter if I don't find. I lost my little piece that keeps these together so it focuses in one spot because I'm working with black on the do-rags and with this one. So I just wrapped it around, but it's still gonna go ping ping. Oh, whatever. Okay, where did I stop? I'm going to go back to the last sentence. Mrs. Quilp, too, was the partner of young Trent, and for every look that passed between them, they were playing cards, I think, weren't they? Yep. And every word they spoke and every card they played, the dwarf had eyes and ears, not occupied alone with what was passing above the table, but with signals that might be exchanging beneath it, which he laid all kinds of traps to detect, besides often treading on his wife's toes to see whether she cried out or remained silent under the infliction, in which latter case it would have been quite clear that Trent had been treading on her toes before. Yet in the most of all these distractions, the one eye was upon the old lady always, and if she so much as stealthily advanced a teaspoon towards a neighboring glass, which she often did, for the purpose of abstracting but one sup of its sweet contents, Quilp's hand would overset it in the very moment of her triumph, and Quilp's mocking voice implore her to regard her precious health. And in any one of his many cares, from first to last, Quilp never flagged nor faltered. At length, when they played a great many rubbers and drawn pretty freely upon the case bottle, Mr. Quilp warned his lady to retire to rest, and that submissive wife complying, and being followed by her indignant mother, Mr. Swiveller fell asleep. The dwarf, beckoning his remaining companion to the other end of the room, held a short conference with him in whispers. It's as well not to say more than one can help before our worthy friend, said Quilp, making a grimace towards the slumbering Dick. Is it a bargain between us, Fred? Shall he marry little Rose Nell by and by? You have some end of your own to answer, of course, returned the other. Of course I have, dear Fred, said Quilp, grinning to think how little he suspected what the real end was. It's retaliation, perhaps whim. I have influence, Fred, to help or oppose. Which way shall I use it? There are a pair of scales, and it goes into one. Throw it into mine, then, said Trent. It's done, Fred, rejoined Quilp, stretching out his clenched hand and opening it, as if he had let some weight fall out. It's in the scale from this time, and turns it, Fred. Mind that. Where have they gone? Asked Trent. Quilp shook his head and said that point remained to be discovered, which it might be easily. When it was, they would begin their preliminary advances. He would visit the old man, or even Richard Swiveller might visit him, and, by affecting a deep concern in his behalf, and imploring him to settle in some worthy home, led to the child's remembering him with gratitude and favor. Once impressed to this extent, it would be easy, he said, to win her in a year or two, for she supposed the old man to be poor, as it was part of his jealous policy, and in parentheses, in common with many other misers, to feign to be so to those about him. He has feigned it often enough to me of late, said Trent. "Oh, and to me too," replied the dwarf, "which is more extraordinary, as I know how rich he really is." "I suppose you should," said Trent. "I think I should indeed," rejoined the dwarf, and in fact, at least, he spoke the truth. After a few more whispered words, they returned to the table, and the young man, rousing Richard Swiveller, informed him that he was waiting to depart. This was welcome news to Dick, who started up directly. After a few words of confidence in the result of their project had been exchanged, they bade the grinning Quilp good night. Quilp crept to the window as they passed in the street below and listened. Trent was pronouncing an encomium upon his wife, and they were both wondering by what enchantment she had brought to marry such a misshapen wretch as he. The dwarf, after watching their retreating shadows with a wider grin than his face had yet displayed, stole softly in the dark to bed. In this hatching of their scheme, neither Trent nor Quilp had had one thought about the happiness or misery of poor innocent Nell. It would have been strange if the careless profligate, who was the butt of both, had been harassed by any such consideration. For his high opinion of his own merits and deserts rendered the project rather a laudable one than otherwise, and if he had been visited by so unwonted a guest as reflection, he would, being a brute only in the gratification of his appetites, have soothed his conscience with the plea that he did not mean to beat or kill his wife, and would therefore, after all said and done, be a very tolerable, average husband. Oh, gosh. Mercy me, and that's all of chapter 23. Let's see how long 24 is. 24 is not too long, but darn, I wish I had brought my drink in here. Well, I'll see how far I can get. Chapter 24. It was not until they... Take this off. It rises and falls every time I take a breath. I want to find that little piece that puts it together, but I guess I can just get a tie of some sort. MacGyver it. McGranny it. Okay, chapter 24. It was not until they were quite exhausted and could no longer maintain the pace at which they had fled from the race ground that the old man and the child ventured to stop and sit down to rest upon the borders of a little wood. Here, though the course was hidden from their view, they could yet faintly distinguish the noise of distant shouts, the hum of voices, and the beating of drums. Climbing the eminence which lay between them and the spot they had left, the child could even discern the fluttering flags and white tops of booths, but no person was approaching towards them, and their resting place was solitary and still. Some time elapsed before she could reassure her trembling companion or restore him to a state of moderate tranquillity. His disordered imagination represented to him a crowd of persons stealing towards them, beneath the cover of the bushes, lurking in every ditch, and peeping from the boughs of every rustling tree. He was haunted by apprehensions of being led captive to some gloomy place, where he would be chained and scourged, and worse than all, where Nell could never come to see him, save through iron bars and gratings in the wall. His terrors affected the child. Separation from her grandfather was the greatest evil she could dread, and feeling for the time as though, go where they would, they were to be hunted down and could never be safe but in hiding. Her heart failed her and her courage drooped. In one so young and so unused to the scenes in which she had lately moved, this sinking of the spirit was not surprising. But nature often enshrines gallant and noble hearts in weak bosoms. Oftenest, God bless her, in female breasts. And when the child, casting her tearful eyes upon the old man, remembered how weak he was, and how the old man remembered... Did I just say that? Yeah, I did. How weak he was. How destitute and helpless he would be if she failed him. Her heart swelled within her and animated her with new strength and fortitude. "We are quite safe now, and have nothing to fear indeed, dear grandfather," she said. "Nothing to fear," returned the old man. "Nothing to fear if they took me from thee. Nothing to fear if they parted us. Nobody is truer to me. No, not one, not even Nell." "Oh, do not say that," replied the child, "for if ever anybody was true at heart and earnest, I am sure you know I am." "Then how," said the old man, looking fearfully round, "how can you bear to think that we are safe, when they are searching for me everywhere, and may come here searching for me everywhere, and may come here and steal upon us even while we're talking?" "Because I'm sure we've not been followed," said the child. "Judge for yourself, dear grandfather. Look around and see how quiet and still it is. We are alone together, and may ramble where we like. Not safe. Did I feel at ease when any danger threatened you?" "True, too," he answered, pressing her hand, but still looking anxiously about. "What noise was that?" "A bird," said the child, "flying into the wood and leading the way for us to follow." You remember that we said we would walk in woods and fields and by the sides of rivers, and how happy we would be? You remember that? But here, while the sun shines above our heads and everything is bright and happy, we are sitting sadly down and losing time. See what a pleasant path, and there's the bird, the same bird. Now he flies to another tree and stays to sing. Come." When they rose up from the ground and took the shady track which led them through the wood, she bounded on before, printing her tiny footsteps in the moss. Wait a minute. Which rose elastic from so light a pressure, and gave it back as mirrors throw off breath, and thus she lured the old man on, and with many a backward look and merry beck, now pointing stealthily to some lone bird as it perched and twittered on a branch that strayed across their path, now stopping to listen to the songs that broke the happy silence, or watch the sun. Let's see that. Wait a minute. Now stopping to listen to the songs that broke the happy silence, or watch the sun, as it trembled through the leaves, and stealing in among the ivied trunks of stout old trees opened long paths of light. As they passed onward, pursuing their... Wait a minute. I have to stop, probably. I'm getting sleepy. Stout trees opened on her light. As they passed onward, pointing the boughs that clustered in their way, the serenity which the child had first assumed stole into her breast, and Ernest, the old man, cast no longer fearful looks behind, but felt at ease and cheerful, for the further they passed into the deep green shade, the more they felt that the tranquil mind of God was there and shed its peace on them. At length the path became clearer and less intricate, brought them to the end of the wood and into a public road. And I'm going to stop there. Sorry about that. I'll try to read earlier tomorrow and be a little more with it. Pray for me that I can stay awake and get stuff done. I sleep really good tonight. And I pray for y'all the same. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. Love y'all. Bye.